What's up, guys? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Pitch Black North Satanic Craft Tea Company. Pitch Black North are a purveyor of fine teas brought to you in delightful, sinister fashion. Every small batch of tea is handcrafted with extreme care using the best ingredients every time. To save 15% off your entire order at www.pitchblacknorth.com, use the discount code HELLRUNE15 at the checkout. My guest today is somebody who I believe truly practices what they preach. He is the author of The Testosterone Solution, an elite personal trainer, and lost over 100 pounds of unhealthy body weight through hard work and discipline. Give it up for the great and powerful Ethan Buck. 3, 2, 1. Ethan Buck. How's it going, brother?
Pretty good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. You know, we've been able to chat a little bit on Instagram, but again, being able to meet up with another guy that I've been having some great conversations online with is really exciting for me. I just read your ebook, The Testosterone Solution, and you know, there's a ton of great stuff in there, which was part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on, because that had just come out. You know, but it's been really interesting kind of watching you on social media because you weren't always in a position to be speaking from a position of expertise, I guess, on fitness and nutrition. So why don't you kind of walk us through a little bit of your story and how you kind of transformed your life from being in this perpetual state of, you know, sort of self-destruction from what you've kind of described into self-creation.
Yeah, well, first of all, likewise, you know, thanks for having me on. We've definitely connected, you know, through social media, and it's a great network for that. And we definitely kind of have our little pod of people that we communicate with. It's cool, and there's a lot of room for growth there and further creation, right? So that's definitely a great tool I like to use. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I guess the path really, you know, I was always kind of the fat kid. I was pretty chubby, and then throughout my 20s, I got up to close to 300 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my biggest. But you know, what led to that was a lot of the insecurities that led to like bad habits, as far as like alcohol and drug abuse and violence. But, you know, that's kind of the bad stuff. There's some positive stuff in there. You know, I got into like the hardcore punk rock scene pretty early, about the age, I think I went to my first show at like 13.
Wow. Yeah, that was about the same for me.
Right. And that was here in Portland, Oregon. But my mom is British, and I spent a large part of my childhood in Britain. So we moved back to Britain when I was 15. And just continued that punk rock lifestyle and started playing in bands and touring a lot. And touring is pretty tough to have this clean lifestyle because you're essentially living in a van and then partying every night, right?
Yeah, the luxuries of the touring musician, right? You know, there's all these kind of fantasies about being in a band and touring the world and playing shows for thousands of people, but even some of those guys that are out there now that are touring full time, you know, it is still that reality of like, you know, wearing crusty underwear and brushing your teeth in the Walmart bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. You're at the mercy of other people's like hospitality and food and everything, and you know, you're completely sedentary. And at the time, I loved it. It was awesome. It was great. It was what I should have been doing at the time, right? And I got really busy with it. If I wasn't on tour myself, I was booking tours or like putting on shows. But every time it was like blackout drunk, maybe a fight, maybe wake up in jail, right? All sorts of drug use and stuff. And that cumulative effect of that for about 16 years really kind of like led me to these terrible states. And then, you know, once I started started getting some mental clarity around my life and what I was doing or wasn't doing with it. I tried and failed to get healthy and fit multiple times. I didn't know like what to do. I was just a fat guy. So I started out with Muay Thai, And I'd get pretty fit doing that for a while. I got pretty good at it. And then the habits would creep back in. You know, there'd be a show or I had a tour coming up, and that would go on the back burner. Lose some weight, gain more. Lose some weight, gain more.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, I've tried this so many times. It's fucking pathetic. I can't accomplish it. Like, what do I need to do to accomplish this? And I kind of had this, like, just epiphany, like this awakening. Like, it's me. It's my lifestyle. It's not the method. It's not the lack of effort. It's the lifestyle, everything around it.
You kind of had a wake up call. Like, did it sort of just happen, you know, kind of in some sort of instantaneous moment, or was it just sort of this back and forth process of trying and failing, you know, kind of dipping your toe in, but not fully committing to creating your life around, you know, health and self-improvement and bettering your life and, you know, not having these setbacks and things like that? Or was it just like, for some people, you know, they just wake up one day and they've had enough. They've had enough of feeling like crap. They've had enough of being depressed. They've had enough of looking in the mirror and hating what they see. And, you know, was it, I guess, what was it a slow process, or did you just kind of wake up and you're just like, no, this is it, and I'm changing this for good?
I think it was actually a bit of both. It was kind of creeping in, but I would just kind of like ignore it, shove it down. It's probably not really a thing. And then one day I was like, yeah, enough, right? And you know, once I kind of slowed down on the partying and stuff, I kind of realized that all that stuff was holding me back, and I just needed to commit. And I remember actually having very vivid dreams, like audio dreams, telling me like to do better, to do more, and do more. To the point that I would wake up in the middle of the night in my room and like search the house if someone was in there. Like, it was like voices. It was kind of crazy, like while I was in deep sleep. So yeah, finally just decided to commit, and that was even still a rough road. I was still kind of learning the ropes and stuff. I was involved pretty much in the MMA scene and stuff like that, and took a couple fights, and then I ended up losing too much weight too soon. Right? I tried. I mean, this is about 12 years ago or so. I tried all the diets. I tried all the training methods. I got into CrossFit. I remember I was doing like an hour of Muay Thai or 90 minutes, and then 90 minutes of Jiu-Jitsu, and then going ahead to a CrossFit class. I don't know how many calories I was eating, but I was like pretty strict paleo at the time. And
yeah,
man, I went from close to 300. I think 290 was the most I saw on the scale, down to 175. And that's what I fought at a few times. Yeah, I fought at 175 a few times. I walked at about 185 for quite a while. And then even then I was like, I was getting migraines. I wasn't as strong as I thought I was. I looked like shit. I felt like shit a lot. Sleeping good. And then I was like, man, I'm fucking lost. I thought I made it. What is wrong here? What's going on? And that's when I hired my first coach and trainer. And that guy really shed some light on a lot of shit for me. And it was like this slap in the face of reality. I learned a lot. Just the accountability and like making things as simple as possible is really kind of what got me on the right road. And then I remember thinking like, man, what a cool job. Like, this guy is like, I don't like the term motivating, but he's very influential, right? He's helping people. He's smart. He looks good. He's like just positive and encouraging to be around. So I was like, I kind of want to look into what that takes to do that for people, because I've been on this path for a while, and I think I just want to help people. And then that's when I was like, fuck it, I'm done. I'm done with like the punk rock partying. I'm done with like the touring. And I still kind of struggled for a while. I still had my band up until about 4 or 5 months ago that I was still reasonably active with. And that was a struggle going on tour. So I just eventually had to eliminate that completely and say, hey, look, guys, I'm career mode. I'm living a different lifestyle. I think and feel differently now. This is what I'm doing. So fast forward, you know, worked at some corporate gyms for a few years, 24-hour fitness. I became one of their top trainers out of thousands, because 24-hour fitness is the biggest fitness corporation in the world. And they tried to congratulate me with a $20 Starbucks gift card. And at that point,
That was literally going to be my next upcoming question, was what motivated you to move away from the corporate gyms and start to go independent? And that sounds like a damn good reason.
Yeah, that's a good transition into that. Yeah, that's a good transition into that question. So for about a year, being that top trainer, so I use the quote unquote because all that means to them is client retention, average revenue, and they said session quality to make you feel good, but really all that meant was that you weren't on your phone or eating, right? You had no fucking clue what a good personal trainer was, or even what like good coaching is, right? Mm-hmm. As long as you were like talking to your client and having them do whatever the fuck, they were happy, right? But
it seems like that industry is so sales driven that all they care about is getting memberships, and they're really not that concerned about whether people are actually showing up, using the facility, making progress with their goals, whether they're even making use of their memberships and things like that. You see that with all of these giant corporate gyms. Like if you've ever gone, even just for the entertainment, I encourage you to go and just see what it's like to be sold to by a Steve Nash fitness sales rep. It is predatory and just disturbing how little they actually value people and their clients improving their strength and their health and all of that.
Right. Well, as soon as I got hired as my first personal training job, I'd helped some people here and there, and I actually ran a little like class for a while, and then I got my first certification or whatever, and then got hired at 24 Hour Fitness. The first 2 weeks was, here's how you sell training, right? And it's a sales job. And you do have to sell your services, right? I mean, that's a big part of it. But you don't have to be this creepy salesman, right? And what they tried to get me to do is they gave me this list of people that are new members that needed a free session with a trainer, which really was like a sales pitch. And then they gave me a list of people that had training before to call, and then a list of people that have training but aren't using it. And they took them from like cold to warm to hot leads, basically, mm-hmm. right? And I was like, man, I know I can do this better. I can connect to people, right? I'm a real guy. I don't need this script, right? I can mm-hmm. think for myself. So I think I did like 3 or 4 calls, mm-hmm. and the last one was a dude in the hospital. He's like, motherfucker, I've told you to take me off the fucking call. I have a broken fucking neck. I was like, shit, I'm sorry. And I was like, okay, I told management, like, hey, look, I'm not doing any more calls. I will get more clients than all these new trainers and more revenue in this first month if I do it my way. And like, no, you can't. I was like, well, watch. And sure enough, I think my first month, my first revenue was like $6,000 or $7,000.
Wow.
The other trainers was like $0 or maybe $200.
Just because you took the approach of treating people like they were human beings instead of a number for the bottom line. Who would have thought that I could use my communication skills to help someone in exchange for the cost of my services? Right.
Mind blown. Like, do it. And then they're asking me like, well, you need to like teach our other trainers how to do this. I was like, they don't have that mindset or the guts to do it. Mm-hmm. And all it was, is that identify someone that looked like they're struggling or maybe self-conscious and just be nice to them and be real with them, mm-hmm. Hang out at the front desk and just look for the person that you have at that gym. You have to like type in your phone number and scan your fingerprint. Person that kind of walks in and they're like typing their shit in, like sighing. I've seen them on the treadmill like 10 days in a row and they're not doing anything. They're watching TV, walking on the treadmill.
Yeah. Yeah, like, sitting. You can see them sitting on their phone on the leg extensions, just like kind of wait until the 45-minute mark ends and they've done their service, but they haven't really done anything for themselves. But it is kind of like, I think so much of that is just that people don't know what to do when they get there, and they're intimidated by the people around them that do know what they're doing to get there. And that's why I think it is so important, if you don't know what you're doing and you have specific goals, or maybe you just want to feel better, is to get a trainer. Like, spend the money, pay somebody who knows what they're doing to show you what you can do, and then you can actually make a real lifestyle change. But people will walk in, they'll go through the motions. I don't blame them if they don't have the confidence. I personally don't really have any idea what it's like to walk into a gym totally fresh, because my dad is like a hardcore fitness freak. Like, we were not allowed not to play sports. That's cool. Our basement was a gym. So I had that advantage. And I feel for a lot of people that walk in there and they just look around and they want to be invisible. But I encourage them to talk to guys like you, because that's just the difference in making the switch. It doesn't take much to learn how to do this stuff, and then all of a sudden this is part of your lifestyle. Maybe this even becomes your thing, like you, where now you've got a career, you're running a business, you're working for yourself, and you're helping people. Right.
Yeah, and those were the people I always identified. They were like self-conscious. They didn't know what they're doing. They didn't want to be at the gym. A lot of times it was the guys like, they'd tell me, well, my wife just makes me come here. I'm like, man, that is not what makes me come here, right? Like,
yeah.
So just, and not being like judgmental, like, yeah, you're sitting on the leg extension on your phone, like, get to work, dumbass. Like, it's not that approach. It's really like connecting with those people and then asking them questions and digging in, like, why they're there and what does it mean to them? Like, what are they trying to achieve? And like really kind of creating that impact. And so like, as far as that, that first week, like I was mentioning, I would just pull people off of machines that weren't doing shit and be like, hey, you want to try something that is different because you've been doing the same thing forever and it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times that worked. So, back to why I left that environment to start my own business was, management came to me and they're like, good news, you made this category of top trainer in the company. And I was like, oh, cool. So what do you want? And I was actually about to go on tour to Europe with the band. And I was like, well, hey, I got 2 weeks off. Could you give me an extra week paid vacation? They laughed at me and slipped me this $20 Starbucks gift. And at that point, I was completely burnt out. I was doing 8 to 9 back-to-back personal training sessions for 1 hour each, 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm. On top of selling, like the amount of mental exhaustion that comes along with direct sales is just insane. On top of that, to have something that's also physically demanding when you have to go and work is just destructive. I know where you're coming from because I actually worked in corporate sales before I kind of started doing all of this online stuff, and just the cold calling, minimum 100 cold calls a day, emailing people, getting rejected constantly, trying to sell things to people that don't want what you're selling is just soul crushing.
Everyone wants to buy, nobody wants to be sold.
Exactly.
Right? So organic, right? If someone does turn up to be kind of a lead and they're interested, don't crush them and your opportunity to help them by being a fucking salesperson, right? Interview. Mm-hmm. I'm very particular in who I allow into my circle, right? I've had the worst kind of clients and they will fuck you up, right? Try and text you 24/7 or just complain. So I have strategies and questions that I ask a lot of people when I do like a call with someone that's interested in using my online coaching services. I don't do in-person training so much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always assessing, like, are we a good fit? I'm kind of interviewing them actually. And then I'll invite them in if they're like a good fit. But I mean, it's not too uncommon for me to say, hey, I don't think we're really a good fit, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting because I feel like I've experienced that before because I haven't worked in personal training in a professional sense, but I have had a lot of people approach me and I have done training at the gym with the expertise that I do have just from years of experience and things like that. And I feel for people who are in that kind of corporate environment where they don't have the choice and they have to just train whoever walks through the door. And a lot of the time, a lot of the people that you are getting are not motivated. They don't want to be there. They're not following your instructions. They aren't sticking to the diet. And as somebody who is an avid gym goer, who is motivated by progress and hard work, that is so discouraging to be in that environment all the time when you want to be surrounded by people that are giving it their all.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, as you, a coach or a trainer, that's really your job to get through to that person and show them the way, right? Now, I think in a lot of those environments, a lot of the trainers are just showing people what they do, right? And they're glorified macro counter, and here's like a program, and they'll kick their ass, right? You showed up, yeah, let's kick your ass now. And that's not creating this good relationship and a long-term sustainable approach for the individual that just hates this, right? Or they don't like it, or they don't understand it. So you really got to connect and dig in and troubleshoot and see what is holding the person back. Because often it's their own mindset or some lifestyle factors, and it's not It's not like this magic thing that they need. Here's some magic calorie and macro numbers and magic foods in a magic program. Like, that doesn't exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to dig into that person's life and their history and their relationship to this whole thing and troubleshoot from that end first to create that long-term sustainable impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have this very practical approach to training, which I really like, because it's the same type of philosophy that I apply to myself, and I don't like to apply things and give advice to other people that I wouldn't take myself. And that's why I can't endorse a lot of these special diets and the keto diets and all these other kinds of things, because I know that's not even sustainable for me, and I take training very seriously. So what I do like about your approach, and this is kind of from my observations being your whole thing online, is finding the right program for the right person so that they can actually make long-term life changes and actually integrate this into into their personal lifestyle. You know, people say they want to lose 50 pounds. Well, if you lose 50 pounds in a month, you're probably going to gain 100 pounds 3 months later, because it's just not sustainable. You cannot starve yourself and expect to keep that weight off forever if this is just a temporary thing. And then you're going to go back to eating the pizza all the time and the sugar and the alcohol and drinking on the weekends and this and that, because you haven't actually created a habit. You know, they say it takes, I think, 21 days to create a habit. But you can't starve yourself for more than 21 days. So what are you going to do after that?
Right. Yeah, that's the whole thing. And there's so much information out there now, programs that promise like certain weight loss or muscle gain, or diets that, you know, Susan in the office has gone keto, and then, you know, Ken in the office has gone carnivore, and, you know, Becky has gone vegan. Which one do I do? Holy fuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's super confusing for people. But, you know, yeah, all diets work. And it's based off of one's principle. And most of them don't promote the principle, but it is calories, right? So let's say that, you know, Becky in the office decides to go vegan, and because she saw Susan drop 20 pounds. And they think that vegan is the answer, right? Well, really what happened is that they eliminated animal proteins, which probably included some animal fats. They included, you know, dairy. And that could be a good third of your calories for the day, right? And there's always this honeymoon phase for each and every diet, right? So, yeah, you went vegan and then you started eating more vegetables and you reduced your calories by removing animal products. No fucking shit that you lost weight and started feeling good, right?
You started eating vegetables for the first time in your entire fucking life.
Mind blown, right? or same even with like ketosis or the keto diet. You know, you remove processed carbohydrates. Maybe you're eating bags of chips and like flour, you know, bread and tortillas all day. You remove that, and then your insulin levels are pretty nice and level, and you're not stuffing yourself, and your energy is nice and sustained. That's your honeymoon period. Of course you're going to feel good, right? But we don't need to go to these extreme ends to achieve this, right? In fact, if you looked at any bodybuilder or powerlifter or strongman that most people are striving to be like, most people that we know, none of them are keto or vegan or carnivore, right? Like very few, right? With the exception of, let's say, you know, a few influencers, maybe keto or carnivore.
But they're not. Those guys aren't becoming Mr. Olympia. They're selling joggers and tank tops and supplements. You know, and even like you were saying, like with the keto diet and thing like that specifically, at least from what I've read and studied about it and things like that, because it can be good short term for some people. But if you are morbidly obese and your diet is terrible and you think that's going to be a long-term solution, it's only going to help you for a little while. If you're hardcore into fitness or you're a woman, that might not even be necessarily healthy for you. There's, you know, especially for women, you get down to certain body fat percentages. I believe it's around 12%. You know, they start messing with their menstrual cycles and things like that. So, you know, like you were saying, there isn't this one size fits all or this fad that's just going to help anybody because it helped one person in one case.
Exactly. And well, so let's kind of break that down. Like the ketogenic diet was initially developed for epileptic children. The medical diet has been proven to help diabetics. In fact, my diabetic clients are usually on a cyclitic ketogenic diet, and they come off of their insulin typically pretty quickly, right? Very beneficial for those people, right? Actually helps people with gut health issues that have problems digesting grains, right? Flours, right? Maybe even some vegetables. Also been proven to help cancer patients, right? But if you aren't one of those people, you don't need to do it, right? There's also some longevity benefits to like a high fat, low carb diet, right? But that's if you're not active. If you just kind of walk and you do some gardening or something, you live in Okinawa, maybe for example, you don't need to do that. But the problem is that, yeah, people drop weight really quick, and then the other people see it and they want to do it. But the reason they're dropping weight is, one, they've reduced the processed foods like we talked about, and also water weight, right? Their muscles aren't holding on to glycogen anymore, and they start to muscle atrophy. So the scale weight will go down, and you might actually get smaller, but your body composition might still stay the same, right? You might lose 20 pounds, but you'll still be a fat version of yourself.
Yeah, because you're not spiking your insulin constantly and things like that.
Yeah, and you run into sarcopenia, your muscles atrophy. You still have fat over the muscle because the muscle's shrinking. Are you striving for a scale number, or do you want to look and feel and perform great? What's more important, right?
Yeah, for me, that's always kind of been the thing. Is I rarely weigh myself. If I see very obvious fluctuations, or if I've made some serious progress in terms of my strength, I might go and hit the scale. But that's like once every couple months. People will, and bodybuilders have this problem too. Not just people who are overweight. They'll go and they'll stand on the scale and they'll think they gained 15 pounds. With, I'm getting fucking huge now. It's, like getting in shape. It's like, no, you're getting fat because you're eating 5,000 calories a day, and it's not balancing out with your workouts. Or perhaps someone is training really, really, really hard, and they're doing all of the right things, and they've only lost maybe 10 pounds and their goal was 25, but in exchange, they also put on some muscle. So it's really a terrible indicator for how to measure your goals.
It absolutely is, especially at a certain level of leanness already. I have clients that are 350 pounds. Absolutely, I have them step on the scale, right? Try and tell them that the scale doesn't matter, right? That doesn't work. And they're not training to build muscle, like some basic strength and maybe some muscle, but I don't have them powerlifting or bodybuilding. I have them walking and on a treadmill, just moving more, kettlebell swings, TRX workouts, that type of stuff, right? You can't take a person that's that obese and get them under a barbell and expect wonders to happen, right? Especially if they've never trained. They just need a little bit more movement, period, right? But, someone like myself or you, scale is pretty much irrelevant. You can get this body recomposition, right? Add a bit of muscle and reduce a bit of fat, and the scale can be completely the same. In fact, I'm doing that right now with a coach. So.
Yeah, and maybe that is my privilege of, I guess, being able to say that. For someone who's listening, they're probably like, fuck you, dude. Like, you're already in shape. Try and tell a person who is feeling terrible about their body image that the scale doesn't matter is probably a difficult thing to convince them of at first. But ultimately, I guess, a lot of this has to come down to where people's minds are at, because they didn't get themselves there with a healthy mindset. They didn't allow their body to become sick and overweight, putting themselves at risk of diabetes, heart disease, early death even, because they were of a sound mind and confidence and really caring about themselves. Because if you don't care about your health, it's really hard to tell me that you care about yourself entirely. So I was reading a lot in your book, and this focus on your mental state and your mindset is a recurring theme that kind of kept coming up. And I 100% agree with this, because I feel like it's the majority of it. You can do so many things and accomplish so many things, whether it's in training or business or, even just as far as having the willpower to choose a healthy square meal over just ordering a pizza because it's snowing outside like it is right now. Nobody wants to leave their house, so they're not going to cook, right? And that's a lot about where your mind is at. And so maybe you can rally on that a little bit, and the importance of that, the importance of maintaining your stress levels was another thing I was really interested in hearing about. And just the things that are really behind why people put themselves into a position to make themselves sick and create barriers in their life. Because you were coming from a place where you were in that state where you weren't taking care of yourself as good as you should have been. It put you in a position where you were very unhealthy. And now you've made the transformation where you are able to actually share how much you've learned through doing it yourself. I love trainers that look like somebody I would rather look like. I hate going to a gym and seeing a personal trainer that's out of shape and they're telling me what I should be doing. So what was the shift in your mindset, and how important was it for you to have discipline, a sound mind, and how did you kind of keep that on the level long enough to create a permanent habit?
Well, I'm constantly having mindset shifts, right? It's a never evolving process, just like everything else. We're constantly learning. But, back to kind of as I was explaining when I was like trying and failing years ago, it was that like, oh, it's me that's the problem. I was trying to blame my lack of success on external sources, right? Mm. And once I was able to sit and have like an honest look or conversation with myself, I started wondering how was I going to get to the next level, right? And that was really just me understanding and calling myself out on my own shit, right? And that was like the kind of the beginning of it. But then once you start working with people, I've done over 10,000 hours of one-on-one sessions now. Like you get a pretty good idea of what basic mindset structures around this is. Like I'm not a therapist. I'm not claiming to be like some sort of counselor, although as a coach or a trainer, that is a big part of your job, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of people are looking for the quick fix and the magic pill, and they're not assessing why they're doing this, what their purpose is. They're not assessing anything other than the fact that they're looking for some diet and some program, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what fitness is to them. And you need to get through and explain to them that their relationship with food, maybe something happened in their life, right? Maybe they're actually depressed, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe the fact that they had kids right after high school and didn't have a life and they've been sitting at a desk for 15 years is actually a fucking fiasco for them and how they feel about themselves, right? It's highly individual. It's explaining mindset to someone can be anything from how much time do you take to sit down and relax with your food? How much do you think you actually need to do in the gym? Or how much of a calorie deficit do you think you need to be in, right? This more is better, this like black and white, like no contrast approach, it doesn't really apply. There's a sweet spot for all of this, right? And that's, I talk about that a lot on social media, like the hormetic response to everything that we're doing. Mm-hmm. So most of the time, my guy clients especially are overtraining, right? Mm-hmm. And severely undereating, right? And I'll get messages like, hey, I missed my last 3 workouts, but I did all 3 of them today. Like, holy, I told you not to do that. And it's literally the same conversation every week. Right. You hit your legs, back, and chest today, all like 20 sets of everything. Holy shit, how do you feel? I'm like, fucking great. And then 2 days later, it's like, I feel very good. My workouts suck. I was like, yeah, lesson learned, right?
Yeah, so, they missed their next 3 workouts after that.
Right. No point, right? There's a point of diminishing returns with all of this, right?
Yeah.
Or the fat loss client, you tell them to eat a little bit less, and what do they go and do? They starve themselves. They try and fast for 18 hours, and then they have like a salad, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, the scale's down. Well, that's not what we're trying to shoot for. So, you got to give them specifics like numbers and food types and whatnot. But I don't know if that really answers your question, but the work around mindset, it can be complex and it can be very simple. It just depends on the person.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important, and it's been important for me because so much of the results that you see are a result of repeating the same patterns and processes over and over and over again. And if you're not in a sound mind, or your mind is kind of in chaos, and maybe you are sleeping in all of the time, or you don't have the discipline to get up at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, so you actually have time, and then you start making the excuses that you don't have time for this, and then all of a sudden you don't have time to make the meals that you're supposed to eat. So you are eating like shit. I feel like all of that is a product of where someone's head is at. And I thought it was interesting that you kind of alluded to the importance of things like meditation, calming the mind, de-stressing, and how that's beneficial to both your progress and the hormonal things that are actually happening in the body. So what does stress do to the body if we aren't able to maintain it?
Well, your average stressed out person is in this chronic state of stress, right? Mm-hmm. And well, first of all, most of us don't have contrast as to what stress actually feels like.
Right.
Because we're so fucking used to it, right?
Yeah, you just kind of adapt to this perpetual state of, you're like this all the time. Your shoulders are tense, you're jacked up on caffeine because you can't sleep because you're so wired, and you've got so much work to do, and you're doing it up until 12 at night, 1 o'clock in the morning. And, it's just destroying people's health, especially sleep. I think you talked about that a lot in your ebook, was the importance of sleep, and specifically what it does to your testosterone levels.
Right. So it turns into a vicious cycle. Right? So you don't manage your stress properly, which leads to poor sleep. And when we're not sleeping properly, what happens? Cortisol, the stress hormone, it gets a bad rap. It's not a bad thing. We need it. It's great times, but we just need like a proper rhythm with it. When that's chronically elevated, it affects our ghrelin, right? Our hunger hormone. So we make poor choices, right? Kind of seek this like reward center of the brain, dopamine in particular, serotonin. Fatty fried foods or sugary foods. Like, I deserve it. It's been a long day, right? Yeah. I've been typing. I've been sitting in traffic, or whatever the case is. So
you're just getting mouth pleasure out of it. It is an addiction because it revolves around all of the same principles in addiction, and even promotes the same hormones in the brain as addiction. When you are under stress and then you cope with stress with something that's unhealthy for you, your brain starts to recircuit so that it gets easier and easier and easier to become more addicted to that thing. And if it's food, it's just as dangerous as drugs or alcohol or anything like that. Maybe a little bit of a slower burn, but eventually, if you become addicted to unhealthy food, you are killing yourself slowly.
Exactly, right. And when this cortisol is chronically elevated, it brings up your ghrelin, so you're typically making poor dietary choices. Some people, however, it's kind of the opposite, right? They're just not hungry. But your blood sugar does spike, and then your insulin starts coming up, right? And I actually read something a few months ago about how they found out where that blood sugar spike comes from, and it usually comes from the digestive tract because it's not being used at the moment in time. So now we're looking at digestive issues, which the gut microbiome is insane. It's we don't even know a whole lot about it, right? So you're stressed out. You either make poor choices because you're seeking reward centers, parts of the brain. Your ghrelin goes up, so you're hungrier, or it shuts down. Your blood sugar's up. Your insulin comes up. You got gut health issues. You see, the endocrine system, the hormones, is like a finely tuned symphony, right? If someone's up playing or down playing, everything else will kind of try and level it out with it, right? Not to mention, there people call it adrenal fatigue as well.
Is that a real thing? Because people use that term all of the time. They sell supplements to aid in adrenal fatigue, and I'm not a biologist, but maybe you have a little bit more information about that you can share, because I think that word gets tossed around all of the time, completely out of context. Adrenal fatigue. It's like, well, I had a coffee today. I'm feeling adrenal fatigue, and now I don't fully think that that's being portrayed correctly.
Yeah, that's why I said people call it adrenal fatigue. It's really been shown to be an accumulation of multiple symptoms from different factors, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a technical term that's somewhat similar called HPA axis dysfunction, hypothalamic adrenal axis dysfunction, and it's basically how your adrenals work with a part of your brain. But I'm not a big believer in it. I don't like to put things out there like insulin or adrenal fatigue for people to put the blame on it, right? My hormones. I can't lose weight because of my hormones, right? Mm-hmm. It's bullshit. You can fix your habits. You can fix your levels. If you've gotten your levels checked and they're out of whack, there are things you can do. You don't need to put the blame on it. Oh, insulin, I shouldn't eat carbs today. These things are very minute. What really matters is your training, what it looks like in your intensity and your volume, and your calories and your macronutrient and food quality consumption, right?
Yeah, and you need to go to the source of the problem too, right?
What's that?
Sorry, you cut out there for a sec.
I was going to say, like, those things are far above any amount of, insulin or hormone factor that people want to put the blame on, right? It's my genes. I can't. It's just a backdoor, an excuse for people to not do the work.
Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about genetics, and I'll jump kind of forward to this a bit because, the body type conversation is an interesting conversation for me. The endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph, the differences between the three. Endomorph is someone who, according to Google, is more likely to be overweight, has a particular body shape. Ectomorph is somebody who is much more likely to have difficulty packing on muscle, more slender body types. And then the mesomorph, who would kind of traditionally be somebody who easily packs on muscle, doesn't have a lot of excess body fat. And you're talking about how it's my genes. My genes are the problem. It's just my body type. And I have difficulty losing the weight. And all these kinds of other excuses that people make. But I'm not sure if I see much truth to that, because I'm looking at you, and in those before and after pictures that you post on Instagram, I'm looking at one and I'm seeing an endomorph. I'm looking at you now and you are fucking jacked. You look like a mesomorph. No one would have any idea that, or no one would make the assumption that you had a hard time getting in shape, because you already are.
Yeah, that people don't see below the surface. I've actually been technically all three, if you want to count them, right? When I was like 75 pounds, I was skinny. I was a skinny, fat, like tiny dude. But yeah, I also don't play into it, because at the end of the day, everyone can train and eat the same way and get the same effects, right? Mm-hmm. Some people do have difficulties gaining muscle more than others, right? Genetics do play a role, right? There's a reason we have the fucking Olympics. Right? I'm not going to be in the Olympics. Those people that are doing shit in the Olympics are genetically gifted. Yeah. Right? I'm not going to be an elite fighter or an elite weightlifter, right? And that's not like, well, with that attitude, you're not. It's like, it's just a fact, right? I can train hard and dedicate every moment of my life to being an Olympic athlete. Odds are it's not going to happen, right?
No, and especially with things like, like professional bodybuilding. There's just certain people whose muscles aren't shaped that way that would be judged well in a bodybuilding competition. But the fact is that you can adapt your lifestyle, implement a training regimen, get a trainer that can help you build a body that looks more like the one that you are emulating or want to emulate. I was the same way. And the reason that I kind of brought this up was that there really isn't a lot of excuse for it if you're willing to have the humility to look at yourself and identify that most of the reason that you are out of shape is because of the choices that you're making. I was like you, where I was very skinny. Very sick. I was dealing with major gastrointestinal issues when I was a teenager, a lot of inflammation in the body. And I actually got so sick that by the time they diagnosed me, I was down to 114 pounds and I was 6 feet tall. So skeleton weight. Prior to that, I already had difficulty putting on muscle. I was very much like a distance runner type body type. After that, I put on a massive amount of weight because of, one, depression, two, the medication that I was being put on to deal with the inflammation in my body, and then the massive amount of just disgusting food that I was eating as a product of how horrible my state of mind was at the time, due to all of the discomfort and things like that were kind of revolving around my illness. So I went from being anorexic, basically, or at least my body was like a person who had been starving themselves, mostly because of the lack of ability to get nutrition due to all the inflammation. Then I became very overweight, so much to the point where I went to a party in high school the summer after I got on the medication, and went up to one of my friends at the party just to say hello because I hadn't seen them in a couple months, and they had no idea who I was because of the fatness in my face, the extra fluid and fat all over my body. And that's when I began to train seriously. And it took 10 years to now be in the shape that I am. And that's the thing, is people need to realize is that it has to be a full lifestyle change. I've integrated this into my lifestyle. I'm there 5-6 days a week, and I build this around everything that I do. And that's how I've been able to maintain a strong body and a healthy body, was a full shift in my mindset and a full shift in orienting everything around my life to making sure that I was going to be strong and I was never going to be sick again. And so if anybody has excuses that they want to make, you might be starting from one place or another. Maybe it's on this spectrum where you can't put on muscle, or it's on the spectrum where you think that you can't lose the weight. Ultimately, it's up to you. And if you want to have the humility to look at all the things that you are doing that are putting things in your own way.
No, exactly. I can't lose weight. Yes, you can, right? You hear it all the time. I've tried everything. Well, look, you might have tried this diet and that diet, but you didn't work, right? Like people that we're talking about different diets, right? People that have gone, let's say, keto to lose weight and they don't. It's not that the diet didn't work. It's that you were just overeating calories in the ketogenic diet, right? It's very easy because it's a high-fat diet and fat has the most calories per gram, right? So you just didn't reduce your calories, right? Mm-hmm. But also, the hard gainer, I can't gain muscles. Well, yeah, some guys or some people just have to train a little harder, right? And eat a little more than the average person. But always can make changes, right? And you do have to have that paradigm shift. You do have to have those honest conversations with yourself and call yourself out, or maybe have like a trainer or a counsel around you that is holding you accountable and calling you out on your shit. Mm-hmm. And, I'm surprised that some of my clients stay with me sometimes because of the harsh conversations we have, right? Like I do coaching calls like all week, some in the morning, some in the afternoon. And this morning I was just, one of my clients hasn't been to the gym in 2 weeks, and it's a common pattern. I'm like borderline yelling at him, mm-hmm. right?
That's where the humility comes in, because people that really want to change and people that really want progress can take the honest truth from somebody who's telling them that you're not working hard enough, you're not sticking to the plan. Be honest with yourself, be honest with me, because you're never going to reach the goals that you want to accomplish if you don't follow my advice and aren't true to the fact that maybe you were slacking this week. But people really haven't made that mental shift if they're still making excuses for why they didn't show up today.
Right. And as their person that's holding them accountable, you need to be able to have those honest conversations, right? And not harsh. I'm not calling them names or screaming at them or nothing, but, I don't think your average person, especially today, can have one-on-one honest conversations with their friends or family or partners, let alone with like a client on the phone on the other side of the world, right? But you have to get directly to the source, and nobody is really being called out on their shit anymore. Mm-hmm. When they are, they're getting emotional and feeling like they're attacked, right? So that's one thing I screen people for is if we have these honest conversations sometimes, how are they going to respond, right? Are they going to be attacking them?
Yeah, I think people are pretty good if you set the stage and set the expectations for them, because they'll remember that when you come back to them, you're like, hey, remember what I said at the beginning? It's 5 fucking days a week. It's not 2. You know what you signed up for. Right. And, setting that kind of that boundary as a trainer, I think, is really important, because ultimately you want to see these people succeed. And being a slack trainer, or a trainer who I see a lot of the time at the gym, who's just got their notepad out, and you've got, this poor lady who really just wants to get healthy, and she's been doing the same useless circuit training for the last 6 months. It cost her $10,000 to do this, and she's getting nowhere. So I respect you for doing that and having the guts and the honesty to make sure that you're actually getting people where they want to be. We were having a conversation right before this about the tapestry in the background. I was just looking at it, kind of got me thinking about some of the things in your book that were kind of alluding to these more ancient kind of archetypes, of, body type and masculinity and being strong. And I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, because I think you and I, just through some of our conversations and even some of the people that we associate with and have been chatting with and connecting with online and stuff like that, have the same kind of philosophies about strength and strength culture and masculinity. And I really love this idea of being a man and being strong and having other strong men around, and brotherhood, and these symbols to kind of look up to and use as fuel for my own life and maybe what I want to be like, or my philosophies that I want to talk about. And after reading your ebook, it kind of got me thinking a little bit more about how we've been shifting away from these symbols of masculinity that embody strength, physical strength, mastery, being self-sufficient, being somebody that can be relied on. And I thought it was interesting that you decided to put that in a book about testosterone. And I wanted to know if you think that maybe this rejection of these ideas of strength and traditional masculinity, and the idea of a man being very strong and kind of brooding and resilient, if that has had any impact on lowering testosterone levels in men. I've seen a few studies that are kind of suggesting that after a certain period of time, there's some cultural shifts, and now we've seen a massive drop in testosterone levels in men. It's actually being documented. So I wanted to kind of see what you thought about that and why you decided to put that in the book.
Yeah. So for me, it's pretty much a theory. Like, the studies kind of really just indicate it. And there's always some things that I'll ponder about. If I could afford it, if I could fund like a massive study, that's definitely something that I would fund. But I think it's apparent that when men maybe our age or younger, especially younger, because that hypogonadism is the low testosterone levels is becoming an epidemic, and it's documented every 5, 10, 15 years. It's just lower and lower and lower, right? And that's not just with age; it's just younger men in their 20s going on TRT. Like, doctors are like, "What's wrong with this kid?" Okay, here's some testosterone every week, right? Yeah. Instead of taking the actual route, right? Like helping them with lifestyle and eating right and some mindset work and training and stuff. But, if you take this society that is telling young men that it's bad to be who they were physiologically designed to be over the course of hundreds of thousands or millions of years of evolution, of course it's going to have a mental and psychological effect on them, right? I want to do this. These are the things I'm interested in, but society tells me it's bad. Mom tells me it's bad, right? That psychological stress is a stress that's going to reduce testosterone, right? Chronic stress reduces your testosterone, period.
Yeah, that's a great point to make, because I feel so strongly that mental health issues in men are a direct correlation to a lot of these inherent and even biological ancestral principles that make us who we are and that make us feel fulfilled when we practice exercising those kind of those primal tendencies and things like that, is actually very good for our mental health. A lot of men these days, they're not really being asked to very much. You see so many, I'm so sick of hearing about millennials, but I'll say it because unfortunately, and I feel bad for them, young men are coming up not really knowing what their role is in the world, not really knowing what their life purpose is supposed to be, not having the ambition to get to a place where they can feel fulfillment, because that aggression that would actually propel them into a position of being successful, the aggression to overcome challenges, the aggression to compete with other men in positions that they're striving for, is being rejected heavily. And I think it's making us, and I think it's making men very, very depressed, because they're not getting what the primitive man inside them is seeking and has always needed for their own sense of purpose in filling a role in their group or society on a larger scale.
Well, that's exactly it. Back to just evolution. We can't take how humans evolved, right? And whether or not you like it or agree with it now, men did have roles predominantly in most societies, and women did as well, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, for sure, there are some societies that women did the same thing as men and vice versa, right? I'm not saying that men had to do this and that's all they ever did. There was always a kind of a mix. And I think that like the kind of the yin and the yang of all of this is important, that balance, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you take how, let's say, most men evolved throughout the course of history, it was tribal community, strongmen, fighters, hunters, right? Protectors, right? And we kind of developed this suppression of emotion. We're really good at like keeping things down, but we let it out through aggression, whether that be bashing someone's skull in because they're trying to protect or attack our tribe, or heavy fucking deadlifts in boxing, right?
Right.
But when you remove that because someone's telling you, like this new band of people have these new ideals and they expect everyone to change, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, here we are. We're actually a very small percentage of the population of the world, like under 1%, and actually only in one part of the world, kind of, maybe like parts of America and parts of Western Europe. But the rest of the world don't give a shit about this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But here we are. We have some radical ideologies, and we expect everyone to change right now. Otherwise, we're going to call you a Nazi and a misogynist and a sexist, and we're going to destroy you in your life online. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy because it's this very, very, very small group of people with somehow a massive amount of influence.
Megaphones.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen to my insecurities, everybody.
Just get louder, and maybe we can just force people to do what they want. But it's a very strange phenomenon for me. And a lot of people will say, "Why are you even talking about this? Men have enough." But you have to be more empathetic to the fact that these are human beings that you're talking about. You can't just shout down at people and harass them online and torture them because they disagree with you. Or these other movements like the hashtag, kill all men. It's like, you're not talking about that. That's a real thing, by the way.
Yeah.
You can't just say that and then come up with a different narrative as to why that's not really what you meant, but you can justify it because you have a cause. But you're talking about real people. You're talking about a young boy maybe who's at home. He's reading his computer. He doesn't have a dad. He already is lacking massive amounts of self-confidence. Maybe he's poor. Maybe he's living in a trailer park somewhere where life is actually really difficult for him and he doesn't have a lot of resources. And his name is Johnny. You're not saying kill all men or kill traditional masculinity. Johnny's going to read that and he's going to think you're saying kill all Johnnies. And we all know where that goes.
Right.
It's a real threat when you start to isolate people like that based on things that, one, they can't change, and two, things that are biologically and inherently part of their makeup. It's a very disturbing thing. And so I just kind of want to give encouragement to any men out there who are listening to this, who maybe they aren't in a place where they feel like they're confident in their masculinity, or maybe they're in a place where they're constantly feeling challenged, especially young men who are maybe in universities where they're constantly having to defend maybe a feeling that they have about maybe liking being that kind of man, maybe liking being someone that gets a release through organized sports or violence or hardcore training, or maybe you're actually somebody's husband and your sole sense of pride and fulfillment is taking care of your wife and children, and that's the role that you've taken on. I just want to tell all of those people to shut their ears to all of this nonsense that tells you from people who are telling you the kind of man that you're supposed to be, or maybe that they're telling you that you should be more feminine or more understanding and empathetic, or maybe they're telling you that you need to share your feelings more. Don't do anything that you don't want to do, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because inevitably, if that's the kind of man that you are, and that's the kind of man that you want to be, and that's the kind of man that you get a sense of pride and fulfillment out of, it's going to bring you a great amount of stress making decisions about your life and decisions about how you portray yourself in the world based on other people's opinions.
Oh, exactly. And I think I like to put the message out there, like, you should always do you and be you. That's like ultimate freedom. Like, fuck what everyone else says, right? You shouldn't be constricted to other people's ideologies or thoughts on how you should be, right? Mm-hmm. You feel a certain way and you feel like you're restricted to be that way because of society. You need to break free from that. Mm-hmm. But I think the problem is that these people have such a stronghold on that Looney Tunes ideology, mm-hmm. that they'll make you feel bad for just being a man that wants to, like you said, maybe provide for his family, right? Right. Patriarchy. Well, that's not saying that like men have to rule the household. I know couples that the wife makes all the money and the guy's a stay-at-home dad. There's nothing wrong with that either, as long as he's a good masculine role model for his kids, right? Mm-hmm. But most families don't operate that way, though, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a message being told to them that they're wrong. And you can't, go travel the world and see how the rest of the world works, right? There's not many people out there that are falling to this ideology.
No, and I sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add something to that. Was I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but these are first world problems. Yeah. I just, without getting angry, if you're listening to this, if you can,
already happened.
Somebody who, it's happening right now. Somebody who is living in Haiti right now, living in literal hell, doesn't give a fuck about your strange ideology and the things that you're trying to push on other people. They're just trying to survive. So have a little bit of humility and let people live their life, because ultimately it's good for their mental health to be able to do the things that they want to do.
No, exactly. And and to the guys out there that feel restricted, that they shouldn't be how they feel they want to be, or what they feel their purpose is. Mm-hmm. If you go overboard with this and go fuck it, switch flipped, and then you turn out to be an asshole, there's other work to do, right? You'll be dealt with by other stronger men eventually, I'm sure. Right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you have to. Ultimately, the goal should be to be a good person, but you can also have a strong character and be a good person. You can be a good person and you don't need to be a pushover. You can be a good person and have aggressive tendencies or be physically strong. You can be a good person and not take shit from anybody. You can be a good person and not let people touch you or or violate you or assault you or anything like that. And all of those, or even you can be a good person at your core, but maybe because you're lacking in these stronger, I guess, more dominant characteristics, maybe you're a bystander on the bus when a woman gets touched by a stranger in public transit or something like that. That's not really good either. Why wouldn't you want to be somebody that can answer the call when somebody's knocking at the door?
That's the whole, I really like the whole concept of the savage gentleman, right? Mm-hmm. You can be kind of the light and the encouragement, right? You can be the helpful person, the educated person, the nice person, the kind person. But you can also have this kind of Jekyll and Hyde. You can be this person that can kill someone with your bare hands if you have to. You can, not back down and get walked all over, right? And the problem with I think a lot of these people is what they're seeing is just the savage side and completely forgetting the positive side, right? Mm-hmm. So they're seeing like, oh, you stood up for yourself. You're toxic. Like, what should I do? Should I just lay down and let you walk all over me? Because maybe then you're toxic, right? Maybe this whole like toxic masculinity thing, maybe it's that hyper feminine push that's toxic, right? Maybe there's toxic femininity. I don't really care. I don't care what you want to call it. Just fucking stop already. Like you can both, right? You can be a strong, providing man that can fuck shit up that is also very helpful, right? There's a yin and yang with everything.
Exactly, and sometimes those are the most useful people who have good intentions, but they have that confidence, they have that competence, they have that ability to make things happen when either somebody needs help or somebody else is relying on them, and I think that is, a really good thing. I know we went on kind of a political tangent there, but I feel like that's something that needs to be said, and so many people are not talking about it. We just kind of accept the status quo and take the shit. And then, if you're like someone who, like myself or you, who's kind of figured out who they want to be in the world, they've kind of figured out how they want the rest of the world to see them. But there are so many men out there who haven't quite figured that out yet, and they're very, very confused. So they're taking shitty advice like this and they're just kind of lost, and that's why they're not doing anything. And ultimately that's why I think this huge drop in testosterone is happening as a result. I think it's a result of these mental health issues and these other sort of contributors. But I still kind of want to stick on the subject of training and these body types. I wanted to kind of bring it back to was, well, while still sticking with the sketchy politics and getting myself in trouble, fat shaming, fat acceptance. This was something I threw back and forth about actually talking about, because who would have thought? I actually have, a lot of like liberal friends. That shouldn't be a weird thing. I'm actually a very liberal person. But I think some things are just common sense, and we can't just call everybody a bigot because they're looking at some strange ideas that are being promoted in the world and rejecting them, because ultimately somebody has to bring things back to balance, because I think we've gone too far in the way of political correctness to the point where it's actually hurting people. And I think in this case, this is one of the most dangerous, disturbing ideological movements that has surfaced in recent years because of how dangerous it is for the individuals on a physical level and for their life by just accepting that obesity is beautiful. You can be a beautiful person. You can have a beautiful personality. You can be a kind person, but you are not helping your friends by telling them that their obesity is okay. The science is there. Every doctor will tell you that obesity leads to a higher risk of heart disease, a higher risk of diabetes, a higher risk of early death. I just can't figure out how not hurting somebody's feelings or allowing them to believe something that simply isn't true and is absolutely not good for them is a good idea.
Yeah, it's exactly it. Well, first off, I come from like a liberal punk rock background, right? And so for those of you that are watching this right now through my Facebook, listen up, right? Because I get a lot of shit from these fucking extreme, like, left liberal people. Like, I'm talking extremists, right? Mm-hmm. Their ideologies. I get so much shit on Facebook. I just block everybody eventually now. But, recently I had
That's why I have like four friends.
Yeah. And, when you do what we do, like promoting your business and your message, you just can't get involved. I mean, I've definitely been guilty of like getting sucked in like a Facebook argument. I'm like, oh, fuck these people, but that just makes me realize that I need to practice my stoicism a little better.
Oh yeah.
But, recently I had just an example. One punk girl that I knew a long time ago, she went down some rabbit hole of like a Facebook friend of mine that I met once about 10 years ago in an MMA gym. He went down his friends list that posted a racist meme, right? The third party, never seen him, never heard of him, never seen the meme. She screenshots it and puts it on my page for my friends, family, clients, potential clients, everyone to see, and just writes, "Who are you hanging out with?" I'm like, I don't know. What are you talking about? Hanging out? Like, one, I've never seen this. Two, I don't know where it came from. I'm like, how fucking dare you? Like, what kind of life do you have that makes you that fucking miserable to go down some like third-party rabbit hole friends list to search for something racist that I am very vaguely related to because a guy I met 10 years ago has a friend that posted that. Like,
how did you even find the time to do this?
No shit. So I blocked that person. Then I started getting messages like, "Hey, just so you know, we're still screenshotting your things and texting you to each other." I'm like, cool, have fun. There's nothing wrong with what I have to say. It doesn't hurt anybody. It's just outside of your little box, right? Mm-hmm. It's not as extreme as the little box that you've imprisoned yourself into. Mm-hmm. Right? But we do have the same moral grounds relatively, right? Mm-hmm. It's just, I kind of think outside of the box, which is healthy. I have a little bit more mental freedom than you. So good riddance, right?
Yeah, these conversations shouldn't be dangerous, and especially in the case where you're worried about a friend. If you're worried about a friend's health and you're worried about a friend's future, and if there's a real risk that somebody is dangerously out of shape, like, don't be mean to people, don't be cruel, don't make fun of people. Invite this person to come to the gym and work out with you.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're actually a person who's feeling like this movement needs to be acceptable because you yourself are having inadequacies about where you're at in your physical fitness or where you're at with your own personal body image, rather than encouraging people to just accept where they're at, we should be encouraging people to get it together and get healthy and work together with other people who have maybe a similar common goal, or even just a friend that you see, rather than looking at that person and being like, look at this fucking narcissist obsessed with their body. Like, fuck this person. Health at all sizes, healthy at all sizes. That's the kind of shit that I hear. And it's like, say that as much as you want, but for somebody like you, Ethan, who was in a place where he was probably pretty miserable previously with where he was at, and then getting to a place where you're strong, you're fit, you've got a newfound confidence. Because of that newfound confidence, as a result, I think you're doing all kinds of different shit that maybe you didn't think was even possible before. From your perspective, has it been better for your mental health to be in shape?
Yeah, absolutely. Like my biggest message here is like, yeah, like everyone's looking at this as like fat and muscle and PRs that I could put on Instagram, right? And those are cool things, right? That's what gets most people interested in it. But the real deal here is how much your life changes, how much more cognitively enhanced you become. I mean, it's been documented that people that lift weights or even just exercise a little bit become smarter. You become more articulate, right? I've never felt the way I felt. I feel now, right? As a fat guy, I had no contrast. I just thought, if someone asked me 12, 15 years ago how I felt when they saw me struggling to get out of a chair or getting mad at a belt because it didn't fit, or like struggling to get my shoes on or can't walk up 3 flights of stairs. So if someone's like, hey, Ethan, how do you feel? I'm like, what are you talking about? Fine, right? They just don't have contrast because it's the norm for them, right?
They've never known what it feels like to not feel like shit.
Exactly, right. Same with like foods, right? They're eating garbage, and then you give them like, a chicken breast with broccoli, and like, oh, that's gross, right? They just don't have contrast as to how that food can actually taste because they're eating engineered foods to strike their palate. But the big is beautiful, the no fat shaming. Yeah, if someone would have taken me when I was close to 300 pounds and said, look, man, here's the thing, right? These are the risks you're at. Your quality of life can drastically improve. You might not know this right now, but if somebody had the art or the skill to show me that, to articulate that to me, I would have woken up a lot earlier than I did, right? And that's where coaching comes into play. You have to have that communication, that art to get through to the person, to explain to them why being that way is not healthy, right? And it's not like, you're a disgusting fat blob, I hate looking at you, right? That's not the message. But you have to understand the quality of life is what matters, right? How you feel right now can be 100 times better. If you take someone that's never really worked out or paid attention to their food, and you just give them a couple workouts a week and a couple healthier meals, they'll start reporting that they're sleeping better, they have more energy, their sex life's improved, everything starts to improve, their work, their energy at work and everything. But, staying at this big size, you often hear like, well, my lipids are fine, so I'm healthy. I'm like, well, there's a lot more to that than just your lipid profile. For example, through that subcutaneous fat, your heart and your body has to get blood to the skin through the fat cells, right? Your heart has to work harder, just carrying yourself around, right? You see really big people, their feet turn out a little bit, they sway back, right? And they have no gut strength at all because they're just relying on their back muscles to keep them up, right? Trying to do this balancing act. What does that do, right? Your feet turn out, you got flat foot on the insides, and then your knees start to collapse in. It manifests up the hips through the spine, and then you get like this forward protruding head, right? You get tight pectorals and weak back muscles, and you don't have any body awareness whatsoever. Now, that might be normal to you now, but I guarantee you 10, 15 years from now, if you continue that way, you're going to be seeing chiropractors on all sorts of pain pills because your body is fucked up, you can't move, and you're going to wonder why. And you're going to go to professionals, they're going to go look at your back and go, well, everything looks okay here, because they don't even know that it has to do with the fact that you've been swaying back for 15 years to deal with the weight that you're carrying in the front, right? Or that your feet are weak because you wear soft shoes all year round because you can't take the pressure of your body weight on the floor without comfortable slippers or shoes or something like that. There's a lot that goes into play, not just how you look. It's quality of life and overall health. And a lot of people think longevity, but I also think health span, right? Because, there are people living to be 100, 80, 90 years old, but what's their quality of life, right? I would much rather live a healthy, vibrant life and die at 70 than live my last 20, 30 years shitting myself in a chair, right?
Exactly. And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, you see older people that stick to exercise and eating properly and prioritize sleep. They prioritize their stress reduction and hydration, getting daylight on the skin, their social health, which is another overlooked component to health, right? They're interactive with other people. Those people are still vibrant. And a lot of them just kind of die in their sleep, or they just fall over and die one day, right? And that's the argument, too, that I get from, let's say, fat shaming. I've had people fit shaming me. Right? That they don't want to hear why they should exercise and eat better. They just don't want to hear it. It's a massive insecurity. Don't burst my bubble, right? Type of thing. And, my aunt, she ate vegetables all day and she ran marathons and then she died of cancer. So, I guarantee you that your aunt that died, I'm really sorry to hear that. I guarantee you she lived her life to the fullest to that day. Right? But you're just trying to think like, I don't need to. I can live long enough and just not have to do that. Right.
Yeah, it's that perpetual procrastination, and it's so dangerous because I promise you will get to a point where you will regret all of that time that you spent because you will get to a point where it does catch up to you and you stop moving. You stop being able to do the things that you want to do. You stop being able to eat the foods that you want to eat. You stop being able to even just enjoy your life very prematurely. And everyone thinks that, it's always like putting tomorrow on the back burner, out of sight, out of mind. But ultimately, is that really worth feeling inadequate because you don't want to listen to somebody who is already where you maybe want to be and actually used to be where you wanted to be, but you don't want to take their advice because being around somebody or taking advice from somebody that makes you feel inadequate is more important than the longevity of your life. It's really, really difficult to argue that.
It is. I think a lot of it just comes down to insecurity. Like again, it's kind of like that straw man argument or the black and white thinking, right? Like, well, if I'm this and then you tell me I should do that, I don't want to be like you. I'm like, well, there's a long way to that. Like you said earlier, it took you 10 years to build what you have now. And I'm still working on myself. You are, like we all still are, right? There's no end point.
Exactly. It's this whole the process of doing the work is the goal. It never ends. And you will see that when you get to a place where you start to see regular progress, and you will actually start to crave being around people who are doing better than you. Once you feel that kind of sense of fulfillment and experience coming from one place and then being in a new place that's a new level of success or progress, or even if you just see your abs for the first time, you want to hang around other people who are doing better than you because you've just realized that you can actually learn something. I want to keep repeating this because it's so important, but humility will get you so far. You will start to crave being around people who are doing better than you and doing more than you. And you know what? Those people are not going to look down on you, because most people who are doing well have absolutely no reason to put other people down. It's other people who you're probably surrounding yourself with on an even more regular basis that are shitting on you because they don't want to see you surpass their mediocrity.
That's exactly it. So you've got to switch your environment, right? You've got to switch your environment. If you're surrounded, so I went through this a lot, and I still do occasionally, right? But I used to think that I had a lot of friends, right? Mm-hmm. And it turns out that they're acquaintances, and a lot of them, bless their souls, so to say, they're still living that same lifestyle, and they're 45, 50 years old, living at their mom's house, getting fucked up multiple times a week, going from job to job or no job, right? They're not happy. As much as they pretend that they are, they're not, right? Mm-hmm. They don't like themselves or their lives, right? And again, trying to blame it on some external source, right? Well, I can't. I was like, yes, you can. I pulled myself out of it. You can. I'm not special. I just figured out that I need to do the work. You have to really want it. But yeah, you need to surround yourself by people that are encouraging and a step ahead of you, right? Whether that be in fitness or business or whatever. If you go to, let's say, you ever been to like a powerlifting meet, you see some of the biggest, strongest people that walk the planet. Mm-hmm. And they're fucking intense. They're getting ready for their max lifts, and they're intense, and they come across as being like pretty intimidating. But if you talk to them, they're some of the nicest, most humbling people in the world. I met Thor Bjornsson in Iceland. I went to his gym.
That's unreal. I want to go there so bad. I see all these different guys. I see a lot of like the Norse fitness guys who I know you're probably familiar with because you've been doing some blogging and representing some of their brand and things like that. And yeah, man, just to be surrounded by people who are so intense and so passionate about their craft and just doing superhuman things, it's impossible to not get fired up about that and to not be inspired by that.
It's infectious, right? And it is an energy. You can't see it, you can't measure it, but you feel it, right? It's an energy it's a booming energy coming from those people. But yeah, I met Thor Bjornsson. The guy's 6'5" and 405 pounds with abs, right? He's one of the strongest on the planet. Yeah. And I'm 6 foot.
Like that's real Viking DNA, right?
Yeah,
there.
I'm 6'3" and 220, and I was like, "Hello, sir." You know, his hand like shaking hands with a bag full of steaks. It was just like, one of the nicest people I met on that whole trip. And I went all around Europe on that trip, right? Yeah. Just super friendly. Oh, come to my gym. Oh, you want me to drive you to strongman competition? Here's all the local strongmen, big, strong dudes. Very encouraging, right? Or I did a powerlifting meet, and it was almost a year ago. By far, I'm not the strongest person at the meet, but there's bigger, stronger dudes there. And I'm like, you know, even I feel that way sometimes. Like, fuck, man, I got some work to do, mm-hmm. right? And they come up and be like, hey, you did excellent today. Like, I really like how you moved. Like, your form was great. I'm like, oh, wow. Cool, thanks, right? That's the way it should be. And that's my whole thing with this toxic masculinity like approach is that encouraging, that guiding, encouraging like just basic mentality is a masculine trait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're lacking confidence, you know, you have no business ever going up to somebody who just accomplished something and knowing that they may have done something that you can't do, or maybe knowing that they did something that you know what it feels like to do for the first time. There's nothing toxic about that. That comes from having confidence. That comes from competence, which is a very desirable and masculine trait. And I just can't see how that can be painted that way. And that's why I think this is such an important conversation. You know, I know we keep coming back to it, but we talk about this all of the time. And it gets, it's always talked about by the wrong people. And I know that people agree with this. And this was kind of part of a big reason why I ended up actually starting Hellrune, was because, you know, a lot of this stuff was going on. And I think I had some apprehensions for a very long time about sharing some of my ideas online, especially in public, because I knew the potential for just the cosmic Twitterverse of the bottom of the barrel people gravitating all to one place to tell you how fucking wrong you are. And it happens everywhere, online, all of the time. And I see all of these other groups and all of these other people who have absolutely no problem offending me. Right. That's the big thing I think people need to think about. These people who are challenging your way of life, challenging your being, which is perfectly appropriate. They should, but the other side has to be able to have their say too. I need to be able to have my piece thrown into the arena of ideas. And so that was kind of what Hellrune was inevitably about when I started to post my writing and making it more of a personal brand, because I felt a duty to share from the other side of the aisle, because it was disproportionately favoring the loudest and least informed people.
Yeah. It's that really makes you kind of practice your stoicism a little bit more, right? Because it's one of those things you can't control. You're not going to get through to a bunch of people arguing in a Facebook comment feed. Mm-hmm. Right? So, you know, I've tried to get through to some people, but it's a waste of time, honestly. Mm-hmm. Unless it's like in person, you can have like a real conversation where they can't hide behind like a computer. Mm-hmm. You know,
exactly. Like the anonymous people just fucking drive me nuts. And that's why I've got a lot of respect for guys that are willing to risk putting their ideas out there, especially like you know, putting out your ebook and promoting your training, and maybe even promoting a different approach to training that you might even get disagreements with other guys who are maybe equally as educated as you, but they've got a different idea about what coaching is supposed to be like. But inevitably, if you're publishing this stuff and you're attaching your name to it and you're willing to put it out there into the world, knowing that it's going to stay out there and eventually your idea about something might actually change, I have so much respect for people who do that, because it's so easy to just talk shit online when there's no name to a face.
Yeah, and that's it. Like you put it out there, and then your idea might change. Like, I try not to be very biased with my approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing what I've learned and what I've seen has worked for lots of people over several years.
Mm-hmm.
But if I look back, I've been doing this full time for 6 years now. If I look back to say 4 or 5 or even the 6 years ago, holy shit. Ugh, right? Right.
And a Facebook memory is the quickest way to find out how stupid you were 5 years ago.
Right. And I'm sure 5, 6 years from now, I'll kind of look back to myself today and go, oh, wow, okay, well, you're doing the best you can with the information and the experience that you have, right?
Mm-hmm. And this is your knowledge that you have right now. And so if that's what you believe right now, you should be able to put that out there and not be held hostage if you realize that 4 or 5 years later that you've actually changed your mind because you've learned some shit. And that's one of the beauties, I think, of actually putting your ideas out there and publishing your ideas. And I've even encouraged some friends of mine that are hesitant, who I know are so smart. They have so many good things to say, but they're holding back and not throwing it into the arena because they're scared that they're going to get bombarded. They're scared that they're going to be attacked. There's a real risk of being doxxed and having your family see this stuff like even you did, or to the more extreme level, having personal information like Tucker Carlson, who ended up having a bunch of freak shows show up at his house and his kids are there. And like this stuff is happening out there. And so I kind of want to just encourage people who to not be so timid and be willing to accept the fact that people are going to disagree with you. And like you said, practice your stoicism, practice your emotional control. And if you're pissed off because everyone else on the internet has an opinion and they're mad at you and challenging you about it and this and that, if you don't like that, because I know I'm somebody that doesn't like that, you also need to be willing to accept that they deserve their right to say it too. So you got to kind of, even though this whole this sphere doesn't really have any rules to it, you can play by your own rules. And at the very least, if you're playing by your own rules, you can feel good about what you're putting out there. And so don't be afraid if your idea you think is maybe correct to you right now and embarrassed that it's idiotic a couple of years from now. Ultimately, you're not growing if you don't look at your past and cringe.
Yeah, exactly. And there's definitely kind of an imposter syndrome component, right? Like what I talk about, health and fitness and nutrition and training and mindset and all the lifestyle stuff. I don't put it out there unless I'm absolutely confident that it works and it is true. It's backed by facts, right? Present me with some facts and prove to me that I'm wrong and I will change, right? But, whatever you put out there, make sure that you are absolutely certain that it's either backed by science or years of your own experience, right? That's my kind of my problem with like academia in the fitness and nutrition field, right? Is that they're in labs and they're looking at this study and that study, and then you get all these like fact researchers when an argument comes up. Well, let me pull up this study. Let me pull up that study. Nobody really knows how to fully read studies. There's meta-analyses and there's all these other things that go around. Sometimes it's done on like a group of 12, 18-year-old men. Well, how the fuck is that helpful for the rest of the world, right? Types of things. So make sure that, you do have some scientific research back there, but whatever you're doing, you're very experienced in doing that, right? You've got the practice. So academia will put out this information, but they don't always have the experience of applying it to the person, right? I've worked with trainers that are highly educated, degrees in kinesiology, nutritional science, sports physiology. Absolutely worst trainers when it comes to application to the individual. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a quote that I like a lot, and it's that you don't have true knowledge until you have experiential knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to be weary of when you are in your beginning stages and maybe you are looking for a trainer, is to maybe don't necessarily solely look at a person's credentials. Do your research and gravitate towards someone who's actually maybe even been where you are now and is where you want to be now, like yourself. Like, I will only take advice from people who are in better shape than me or are advanced in a particular area that I lack.
Right.
You don't have to be a bodybuilder. You don't have to be a power lifter. Like, for example, I don't know if you've talked to Coach Josh Wood on Instagram at all.
A little bit, not too much.
Yeah, so I've chatted back and forth with him a little bit, and I've been getting a ton of advice from him about this upcoming trek that I'm doing on the West Coast Trail. It's a 75-kilometer hike that I'm doing. I've never hiked that distance in my life. So I'm going and talking to a guy who does that stuff for a living. He does it all of the time. He ended up going on a trip with actually Kyle, who I think we're mutually friends with online with, and they went and they trekked through Nepal. And those are the people that I want to get advice about something specific. And that's the thing, is you're always learning. You never get to a place where you know everything. There's always going to be somebody that knows something that you don't. So maybe I would be able to teach Josh something about mastering the deadlift, maybe, or
right.
how to get more out of a particular kind of movement. But like, I'm going to him if I want to find out what kind of gear that I need to hike for 75 kilometers, what kind of food I need to eat, how much weight I might need to lose so that I'm not packing around more weight than I need to, and I can actually be efficient in getting through this trip without killing myself, so I can actually enjoy a little bit of the sightseeing along the way. And that's the importance of having a coach. That's the importance of experiential knowledge and talking to people who are out there, and you can see them doing the kind of shit that you want to do. All degrees aside, all certifications aside, I think all that stuff is important, and it definitely adds to someone's credibility. But look at what they're doing. That's the biggest thing that you can do, because ultimately, that if it's possible for them and they're showing that it's possible for them, it's possible for you.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're looking for guidance, like a coach, a trainer, do your research, talk to them a little bit, see like what testimonials they have. How they help people that are like you, or they help people that are just like different than you, but they have like a good resume, right? Because even that trainer might, like a prep coach, for example, someone that gets people ready for photo shoots or like bodybuilding competitions. Really good at what they do, but if you're an office dweller and you don't really know what to do, or you've been just working out for a little while and you're kind of stuck, that's probably not the trainer for you, right? So if I get someone that's like, hey, I've got vacation coming up in 3 months, I want to get shredded, I'll just refer them to someone else, right? Because what I want is to create impact and lifelong change, right? I want my clients to be able to walk away after a certain point in time and say, I'm fucking dialed in. I know what to do now. I don't need my coach. I don't need Ethan anymore, right? And I have that conversation. I had it last night with a client. Hey, we've been working together for a few years now, and you're fucking dialed in. Our check-in calls, like everything's perfect. I honestly don't know much more that I could offer for you apart from accountability and maybe some different training concepts that you already kind of understand anyway. Why do you need me? And sometimes it's like this, are you firing me? I'm like, no, I just want to know, like, do you really need me? Right? Because I like to graduate people. Hey, look, you've done great. And that takes a long time, right? I'm not saying, hey, we're going to speed things up and get people into this massive lifestyle change in a few months and like, hey, good job. Yeah, take care. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, and if you're doing your job, that should be your goal as a trainer. It shouldn't just be a paycheck, because ultimately you do want to see people get to a point where they're self-sufficient and they've learned everything that you can teach them, other than maybe like maintaining a relationship and getting a checkup every once in a while. One thing I thought was really awesome, because you had actually set up a training program for me, and we had touched on this very lightly, but I wanted to bring it back, was actually this idea of focusing on mobility and movement, especially if people kind of getting into their old age, and this idea of longevity and your overall sort of scope of health and I guess quality of life. Ultimately, maybe you don't give a shit that much about having a six pack. Maybe you have no aspirations to be a competitive athlete, but at the very least, everybody should want to be able to move the best they can for as long as they can, because ultimately movement is what's going to allow you to enjoy your life above anything. Can you move? Can you play with your kids? Can you go on vacation and go out and swim in the water with your son or your daughter? That's how you explore the world, is movement. If you can't move, what good is that?
Yeah, exactly. My motto is move well, then move often, right? So classic example, someone comes in and they've got a trap hike and they've got like scoliosis, right? And they've got neck pain and knee pain. Oh, I want to lose 30 pounds. Like, okay, can we fix some things first before we tackle that goal? That's the end goal, and we can work on that like through some basic like actual just like walking and nutrition, but can you be patient and fix those things first? Because I promise you, if you came or went to the wrong trainer, or if I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, I was like, yeah, this person wants to lose 30 pounds. Here's my one and only bodybuilding program, and here's like a diet plan. You're gonna fuck that person up, and I see that shit so often. Like, you can be an imposter online today, right? Mm-hmm. You can be a completely fake person online, sell training programs and diet plans, and fuck people up, right? If you can't put your arm up over your head, or you can't squat to depth for whatever reason, we're not going to get into like lifting weights and training programs just yet. Like, your training program is going to be mobility and corrective exercise and some lifestyle change. And that's actually like the beautiful and perfect time, good opportunity to focus on that lifestyle change and cleaning up your nutrition while you're correcting things and not focusing on, do I hit my chest today, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest groups of people that neglects this is people who already kind of know what they're doing, actually. Honestly, I'm one of those people. I'm realizing how important movement is for my training and even just for my quality of life. And I consider myself somebody who knows quite a bit about lifting weights, getting in shape, and getting strong. But this past summer, I fucked myself up. I was overtraining, like you had advised against. But even for guys who are kind of hyper motivated, that is the other side of the spectrum, is where you're at a much higher risk of getting injured, especially if you can't move. I tore my trap off the AC joint, and I ended up tearing some muscles in my lower back and kind of screwing up one of the discs in my back. The back is healed now. I'm feeling so excited about that, but I'm still struggling with my shoulder and ultimately the mobility of my shoulder and my upper body. And so it was very humbling to have to basically go back to square one and learn how to lift again, because that was the only thing that I can do, really, was to just practice getting good at moving, because I couldn't practice getting strong. I couldn't hit the PRs. I couldn't do the 300-pound bench. So to go back, and then I'm like, well, wait a second. It's like, not that there's no weight on the bar. It's like my feet are actually kind of fucked up when I'm setting up. You're used to kind of just a way of training, and, you kind of do the whole grip and rip thing, and sheer willpower and kind of conditioning can get you very far. But when you kind of break it down, no matter where you are in your fitness journey, there's always room to improve. And above anything, movement should be where you start before you get into anything. And since I've adjusted my movement and corrected I didn't have a lot of issues, but I had some issues with foot placement. I realized that my ankle flexibility is actually terrible, so I had to switch up my shoes. I had to get some new gear. I had to actually rebuild my core because I had become too reliant on a belt, training with heavy weight all the time, and I wasn't training without a belt enough, so I lost the core strength, and that was actually what was the cause of why I injured my back. And so now 80% of the time I train with no belt. My movement is 10 times better. My flexibility is 10 times better. My hips are in the right place, so I'm able to actually drive properly with all of the correct muscles, and my strength is going up. So
you have to. I like that you brought up the feet thing because I want to touch on that. So most people's objective, whether they be beginning or maybe like 1 to 2 years experience of lifting, like you said, they're just trying to rip weight off the floor. They're just trying to crank out. And I always put this out there that your ego is really getting in your way, right? You're not slowing down and learning, but ego is a part of the psyche, and all parts of the human psyche have their place in time, right? It's important to use it. It can be a really good tool at a certain point. But you do have to be a student to accomplish these things properly, right? And it's pretty difficult to take the highly motivated person, especially young men, that are really into gaining muscle, getting stronger, losing fat, just being like stronger, whatever. And take them and say, hey, why don't we take 50% of that weight off and work on connecting your feet to the floor? Or why don't we work on this form and bracing and getting your hips to fire, right? Kind of listen for a minute. And then the next day, or you walk away and 5 minutes later, they're trying a new PR, right? And that's how people get fucked up, right? At the end of the day, you can always be the guy that moves the best. You might not be the biggest or the strongest, but you can always improve how well you move, right? But if you keep trying to max this shit out, train 7 days a week or twice a day, or do all your missed workouts in one day, eventually you're gonna burn out and fuck yourself up, and you're not gonna be doing anything. You're gonna be focusing on rehab, right? And
exactly. And all that progress, all those 2 days that you thought were getting you that much closer to the body that you want, or this and that, I hate to tell you, it goes away 10,000 times faster than it takes to get it. That's one of the most frustrating things as somebody who really takes training seriously and gets, it's deeply satisfying to rip 500 pounds off the ground. There's nothing more satisfying than that. But when that's all put to a stop and you get your string bean arms back and you're losing muscle definition in your quads and your bench press is cut in half, that's not fun. And then you're starting from square one all over again.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of people that come to me, most of them are in some sort of a plateau, right? Most of them have been lifting for a while and have some basic knowledge on the big lifts or training and some basic knowledge around nutrition, but they've hit a wall, right? Their progress has stopped and they're freaking the fuck out. And I really appreciate them like taking the time to give me the opportunity to help them, right? But you've got this person that's been going through a linear progression, basically, right? They've been adding incremental amounts of weight and volume to the bar or just to their training in general every week or two, and they're beyond this newbie gain phase, right? They've gotten really strong really quick. And I'm actually jealous of those people because that doesn't happen to you or I anymore. Right?
No.
Right? You can add tons of weight.
The amount of work to gain 10 pounds on your bench press or to even gain 5 pounds of muscle once you kind of hit that point is very, very difficult. Yeah, and I'm actually not that concerned about that stuff at the moment anymore, right? I'll go through some more training cycles again, of course, sometime soon, but you gotta learn to relax, sit back and relax and accept and work on other things, right? But you take this person that they've come to me and they've seen some tremendous progress in the last year or two, and then something just takes it away from them. They're freaking out. You got to give them different training strategies and explain to them that linear progression does have a cap to it. If it didn't, there'd be people out there bench pressing freight trains, right? Well, I don't get it. I was adding 10 pounds to my bench every week, and now I can't. I'm like, well, yeah, of course. It's not that easy. So you have to give them different training concepts. Now, a lot of times, you need to work out less, right? You need to relax. You need to work on some movement. You need to work on some different concepts, some speed work, right? Whatever it is. And people don't like to hear it, right? Because they're this, especially in America, right? An American mentality, the go, more is better mentality, right? It's fucking people up. There is a time and place to do more, and more is better on certain times, just like the ego using that. But it's not 100% of the time. That progress is never perfect, right? From point A to point B, I did it. Or when it's weight loss from point A to point B, it's up and down plateaus. And it's these little plateaus and these little dips where people freak out and either quit or they do the complete opposite
of what they should be doing and try and do more, like 2 workouts a day or 7 days, right? More weights, more intensity. And then they're looking at not only injuries, but frying their adrenals and their central nervous system, poorly recovering, and their life just turns to shit. And people get stuck in this cauldron of that kind of chaos, right? And the lack of knowledge.
Because they can't see the chart, so to speak, that you're talking about. You know, they're experiencing the plateau or they experience the dive, but if they were just consistent and playing within the boundaries of the game that's gonna suit regular progress without setbacks, they would see that it's like this.
Yeah,
you know, it's on that upward trend, even though there are these little peaks and valleys and here and then, but when you're just up, and then your chart's going to look like this. You're going to drop down, and then there's all these other little things that you're going to have to deal with along the way back to recovery, and then you're going to have to reform everything. After I fucked up my shoulder, I cannot bench press the way I could before. I had to completely change my grip so that it was a much wider grip, not to inflame my trap muscles too much and the shoulder joint. And that made me quite a bit weaker for a while. And so then I had to go through the progress of building that back up and getting more efficient in movement with a wider grip and things like that. So it's just, I really encourage and love the mentality of people just pushing beyond the boundaries of what they're capable. But if your goal is to be able to train long-term all the time, I don't suggest doing the kind of shit that I've been doing over the last year.
Well, I think that's kind of the problem, and I do prescribe a lot of meditation for clients just to kind of zoom out and see this bigger picture. It's the same whether it be training, gaining muscle, losing fat. Everyone wants everything as quick as possible now, right? And that's what gets people into trouble, right? You can be, right? You could drop 20 pounds like we discussed relatively quickly, or you could turn to performance enhancing drugs and gain lots of muscle and strength relatively quickly. But it's not sustainable. You're not going to be able to do it for a long time, right?
And you get that a lot with guys who are very motivated to push heavy weight and really just keep packing the weight on. It's like a new PR every week, and that was probably the greatest mistake that I made, because everyone wants to just, you know, it's 225, then it's 315, then it's 405. Everyone thinks that you have to go up a plate every time, like a pie, every single time you want to go up. It's like, well, okay, I'm at 405. I'm just going to, let's do 495. And it's like, you might be able to lift that, but all these other little muscles and structures and tendons and joints and things like that haven't climatized to this new extreme amount of training, this big jump that you're doing. So one thing that has been amazing for me as far as actually making real gains of strength is moving up very slowly every single week. So instead of coming up and I'm like, I'm going to bust a fucking 60-pound squat PR today, you know, I'm working up to kind of my 80% range, let's say around like 365, and I'm going to hit that for 3 reps. Okay, that felt pretty damn good. I'm going to do that next week again. That feels any lighter. The following week, it's 375. It's not these massive jumps, but the rest of my body, my core, my abs, my lower back, they're all getting, my conditioning is adapting to this weight rather than just shocking your entire system and ending up injuring yourself, or not being able to squat for a few days because the joints in your knees are not used to having that amount of weight and tension on all these other little ligaments that have to be built up very, very slowly. Muscle tissue repairs pretty quick, but all these other things, if you tear a tendon, like, good luck with that.
Yeah, tendons are dry. They don't get a lot of fluids and nutrients going to them, right? So you got to consider that, especially like with weightlifting, like heavy weights. You are training your central nervous system a lot too, right? But that what you were referring to is step loading, and I think that's a brilliant way to go with, right? You become efficient at a certain weight. So 365 in the back squat for 3. Do it again for another week or 2 until it just feels kind of easier, and then add weight, right? But problem is that, well, one, a lot of people aren't even following programs correctly, right? They're adding to it. That's not following a program. Like, not doing part of the program isn't following it, and adding to it also isn't following the program. Yeah. So they'll hit like 365 for 3 and be like, 2 minutes later, like, fuck, let's knock it up. I did it. I can do it. And they get all ramped up. They ramp themselves up, and their training suffers, long term. Mm-hmm. So that step loading is a really, really smart approach. I think it's you just become efficient and adapt to a certain weight, and then once you're comfortable with it, once it seems really easy, go ahead and do it. But there's so many ways to do it. You can do time under tension. You can do reps. You can do so many different things. There's mind to muscle connection too. Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, like the hardest thing as someone who really just loves that feeling of just getting under the heavy weight and pushing through it and just seeing whatever fucking happens, and the mentality of like, I'm not even going to throw the fucking safeties on, because if I throw the safeties on, that's an excuse to not get the weight up and things like that. And it's like, that's actually not making you very much stronger. I feel so much stronger overall in my entire body and efficient in the movements, especially the heavy movements, having done this very slow progression, because now every time I get under 365, it's without a belt. My whole core can handle it, and I can just walk out with it and squat it 3, 4, 5 times and then rack it. I could not do that when I was doing these big jumps before.
No. Yeah, there's a cap.
Right? It really depended on the day. Like, it would be so dependent on if I slept right, if I had eaten properly, if my mood was bad, and then you go and throw this weight up. It's like you really, so much more of that becomes motivation than the actual well-developed strength, I guess, is kind of what I'm promoting. Is really, you're not that strong if you're only strong on a Thursday, the day that you didn't work, and but when you can just walk up to a weight, maybe it's a little bit less than your all-time PR, but you can go and you can rep that out a few times and you feel comfortable on it every time. It's not a sketchy movement. Every time you get under the bar, it's not like a toss-up whether or not you're going to injure yourself. I feel like that's when you're getting to a point where you are actually gaining and maintaining new strength PRs.
Yeah, and I'd like to make a point too to the guys that are trying to get stronger and maxing out all the time or lift too often. Is if you take a look at even an elite powerlifter's training program, how many days a week is that? 4 max typically, right? Mm-hmm. Often it's just 3, right? And what does their amount of volume and intensity look like? It's not a whole lot. Mm-hmm. You look at the Texas method. That's a simple fucking program.
What is the Texas method?
It's basically a 5x5, but they're getting efficient with weights.
Right.
It's kind of like what you referred to, and they're alternating like overhead presses and bench a lot. But you've never seen like an elite power lifter do like max effort lifts all the time. In fact, the ones that are like highly advanced and elite, they're only maxing out around their performance, their matches. So that might just be once or twice a year. Right. But you have these guys in the gym that are trying to max out every week or every month, and it's not working for them, right? So you don't get to skip all this years of hard work and opportunity or dedication from.
Just send it. Send it all the time.
Right. Hey, look, I've been lifting for a year or 2. I'm going to do what Thor Bjornsson does and be like him. It's like you don't get to skip all that just because you do something similar. In fact, he gets to do that because he's been doing it for a long time. Like we need to step back and focus on some of the minor things, the minor details first.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because a lot of the stuff that people are seeing online, I mean, I guess that's why I love powerlifting, because it's a very practical way to measure your progress. You can, either you can pick it up or you can't. I mean, you can cheat a bit on squats. You can cheat a little bit maybe on your bench press. I mean, but ultimately to me, like deadlift is king, and that's why I love powerlifting. I think with the fitness industry though, and a lot of the sort of Instagram bodybuilding community, which is kind of really strayed away from competition and merit and being a professional, more towards just kind of promoting products. And I wanted to quickly kind of talk about the fakeness of this industry and what your take on it is, because you're actually working in that industry and involved in that industry. And specifically, because you had kind of brought up TRT in your book, I wanted you to quickly explain to whoever's listening what hormone therapy really is, and because I think there's a lot of stigma and misinformation about that, and then what people online are actually doing, we can talk a little bit about, and why the products that they're selling and the images that they're selling isn't working for the average person, is mostly because of the rapid abuse of steroids in the fitness industry.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And I guess I'll say this first as kind of a disclaimer. I'll do two disclaimers, right? One, if you're looking for some sort of TRT, get your levels checked. If you're under 35 or 40, odds are you don't really need it, right? There's other things you can do. But also, if anyone that's listening, people that we know maybe are into, drug use for performance-enhancing purposes, it's my opinion that you do whatever the fuck you want, right? As long as you're educated and use it properly, and you want to live that way, I don't care, right? It's not my wheelhouse. It's not something that I endorse. Something that I personally would do. But I totally get it, right? It helps you get bigger and stronger and feel great, right? And if you want to live that way, and maybe if it shortens your life a little bit, but you're living life to the fullest, again, that's great, right? Cool.
Yeah, I think it's really important too for, it is like you said, who should be using it. So to you, who should be using, or who should consider the option of testosterone or hormone therapy?
Right. So
what kind of person would that be? Because it's not your 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old Instagram influencer. And we can talk about that a little bit more after. It's men who they've gotten their levels tested. They've gotten the nutrients tested in their blood. They've gotten their hormones tested. And maybe they're at an age where, they're obviously not planning to have any more kids, and they feel like shit. They don't have the energy. Their age is caught up to them. Their natural levels have depleted. They're doing all the right things, but ultimately, maybe they want the last 30 years of their life to be more vibrant. Is that kind of what you're talking about in your book?
Yeah, pretty much as far as going that route. So, I do think that age is a huge factor in it. It's been documented that after a certain age, our testosterone levels naturally decline by 1% to 2%. And then you add poor sleep and stress, then that can even double, right? So, exactly. Someone in their teens or their 20s probably don't need it. If they decide to do that for whatever reason, that's you. Go ahead and do it. Just be aware of the risks and long-term effects, because you're still developing at that age, right? But yes, you need to go to a doctor. Now, here's the thing. A lot of Western medical doctors will look at symptoms of hypogonadism or low testosterone and just give you an antidepressant, right? Because they're very similar, right? I don't feel good. I'm not sleeping good. I don't have the energy. I'm kind of depressed, right? I don't feel strong. I struggle losing body fat, all that type of stuff. Here's an antidepressant, right? So a lot of times you want to go to like a hormone clinic or a naturopathic doctor that'll take a little bit more of an in-depth look. And if that's the route that they decide to take, it's not a whole lot of testosterone. In fact, the abuse of it is a lot more, right? So 1 to 2 milligrams per week, right? And people that are quote unquote abusing it are taking a lot more than that, right? And that's just testosterone. There's other things that people take that I think you wanted to touch on too as well.
Yeah, ideally, for a healthy person, probably in his 40s, 50s above, testosterone replacement therapy is going to get you to the level of like a healthy 27-year-old male, which ultimately, it doesn't really matter what percentage of that testosterone is yours. It's better to have it in your system than it is to have half of that for your health. I'm not a biologist, but from the research that I have done, that's what it's telling me. You might disagree with me, but as far as the longevity and your energy and all these other things that you're talking about with, chronic fatigue, pain, inflammation in the body, that's a viable route to take if you've taken all of the other measures to make sure that you're taking care of your health and your natural levels have peaked by doing the right things. As far as with the fitness industry, like you were saying, a lot of people, I fucking hate the unrealistic body image conversation, mostly because these are real people that are obtaining it, but there's misconceptions about how it's being obtained, and we're buying up a lot of these products, and they're selling a lot of products and selling clothing and all this kinds of stuff. But ultimately, for a 50-year-old male who sees maybe somebody on Instagram who's just fucking jacked and ripped to the tits, and they're telling you, if you just take these BCAAs, you're going to fucking look like me. It's not realistic. And that's kind of why I wanted to bring up the conversation about steroids, because one, most of the people that do look like that are taking them. Let's be real. The other thing is they're taking a lot more than your healthy dose of testosterone. Often they're taking anywhere from 500 to 750 milligrams to even a gram or more of testosterone a week. On top of that, guys are taking very potent and toxic androgens like D-bol, anadrol, tren, all these other kinds of things to aid in accomplishing this image or the goals, or even the weight that they're pulling. The strong man, a lot of powerlifters in different powerlifting leagues don't test either, and they actually promote non-testing, and then they have the tested groups, and that isn't to take anything away from those people. If that's the route that you're going to take, you should probably own it, but be able to educate people on what you're taking so that young guys aren't taking more than they need to be taking. That's dangerous for their health. So that older men know the difference, and so that there aren't so many misconceptions and terrible information being spread around about how to obtain these feats of strength, or how to obtain a body image that isn't necessarily attainable without the use of these drugs. So I guess I've mulled over sort of the idea of maybe we need to have less regulation around this and just more information, and being able to actually talk openly about hormones, because there's this weird stigma around it, even though there's a massive amount of people, even just average people at the gym, that are using it. So to those people, no knock against them. To the people that are really confused about what's attainable naturally, talk to a trainer, and they're going to be able to educate you more on what you should actually be doing based on your makeup, on your health, and your age.
Everyone's kind of playing this comparisons game. So you get the person that sees the influencer or whatever on Instagram, and they're shredded or they're huge or whatever, and then that person either doesn't know that they're on some sort of steroid or drugs. And then they get frustrated because they can't be like them, and they're doing all the things that they thought they should be doing, right? And then that's not to discredit those people that decide to take that route, because they're still doing the work. They're still working, right? They're putting in the effort and the time in the gym and in the kitchen and the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
They're just a little more enhanced. But people need to know, right? People need to know that is happening, and that naturally you're probably not going to get to that state, right? If you look at a guy that has been working out and has never touched those drugs 3 to 5 days a week, for example, for a long time, and he's dialed in, might look like me. And then you look at a guy that has been working out for maybe half that time, but is on all the anabolic steroids and dialed in and still does the hard work, there's going to be a pretty big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. That's a good point, that the information should be out there on what people are taking and how much, because it does kind of boil down to like the kid or the person seeing how this person trains or how they eat, and the more is better attitude that, hey, if they do that and I do a little bit more, I'll get closer to the way that they are. And if they find out that they're taking a certain drug or whatever, and they have that more is better attitude, they could end up fucking themselves up and not killing themselves, right? Particularly, a lot of guys are taking, like, insulin's been kind of a big one lately too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's that can be dangerous, man. If you're not like timing carbohydrates and stuff like that, people
you can misuse insulin once and you're dead.
Yeah, you can go into diabetic coma or be dead. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not really my wheelhouse, but like I said, I know that some people listening to this are probably taking a lot of these drugs, and I totally get it. Right? If you want to live that lifestyle, I totally respect it. But I think it should be put out on the table a little bit more. But that could be touchy on how you put it out there, because it could be taken as an endorsement, and it could be encouraging to people to just take that route too, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think there just needs to be more of a conversation around it, because it is so commonplace now. And I don't think a lot of people, maybe people who are outside that world, don't realize how common it is. But like, I'm in the gym every day. I hear the conversations. I'm in conversations online. For the most part, I can look at somebody and have a pretty good indication of whether or not that they're on something, which is fine. I'm not endorsing the use of steroids. I'm not endorsing that people should be taking things that are in unhealthy doses to maximize their performance or anything like that. I'm just saying that ultimately you can do whatever you want with your body. I think what we need to be able to promote is just open conversation about something that is a reality, and in this kind of small little world that you and I have found ourselves in. The other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was this, it's kind of interesting. I wanted to give just a quick shout out to Jack Donovan, because he's actually the reason you and I got connected, and a couple other guys that I've connected with online. So big shout out to Jack. And he made a great point to me about connecting with guys and other men who are actually living within your vicinity, which was a big reason why I wanted to bring you on. I think Jack's actually probably going to be my next podcast guest, as well as a couple other guys that have kind of connected through this internet pagan universe that seems to be gigantic, but it's very interconnected. But I really like the concept around tribe that he promotes, and I've kind of seen it firsthand, experienced at a very small level, just with some of the things that he's kind of encouraged me to do. But you're kind of more immersed in Jack's personal circle as his friend. And I just kind of wanted to talk about what the importance of tribe and having a group of men has done for you, for your personal development and accountability and all those kinds of things that surround or that create a good environment for progress as a man.
Yeah, that's a good question too. I think it kind of goes back to how we evolved. We were always in some sort of a council, right? How do we survive? How do we eat? How do we fight off those people, right? And now we don't have to have that, right? But maybe that is one of the reasons that a lot of people are depressed or have low testosterone levels, right? Or aren't living fulfilling lives. I don't know if that's the answer, but how it's changed me is, yeah, you can have honest conversations about growth and potential, right? And creation. And not many people are comfortable with those kinds of conversations, right? People like to live in their soft, comfortable lives and just kind of stick to it, right? And that's fine. If you're truly happy that way, then just live that way, right? But I don't think that most people are, right? And that's a very superficial thing, I think.
Yeah, you kind of you said something that I really agree with, and that's being able to have honest conversations. And I think part of being able to have honest conversations is to be able to take honest criticism. And there's no better place to do that than with other men that you trust and that have gained the trust of you, where they hold you accountable. And if you've got a solid group of friends, or you've got a solid group of people or men that really actually do want the best for you, they're going to tell you when you're being a fucking idiot. They're going to let you know when you're doing it wrong. They're going to let you know, like, that thing you kind of said and you threw out there online is like, that's kind of a ridiculous idea. This is what I think. And then you're constantly being challenged. You need to have other men challenge you in order to do better. And I think that is ultimately integral for growth as a man and growth as a person. And I really feel for men who don't have that in their life, because I've benefited so much from surrounding myself with other men who are doing better than me, or other men who know more than me, or maybe they've done more research on a particular topic like politics, or some of these other sort of trending subjects, or what's happening in science, or what's happening in university. Not just the ooga booga shit, but a lot of these conversations I'm having with these very motivated and specifically athletic men is that the conversations are very intellectual. The conversations that you're kind of seeing in the comments section, in these threads and direct messages, is sort of really inspiring, and it just is an answer to the toxic masculinity subject that we were talking about. It isn't just this brainless primal aggression that people want to portray. It's being able to express, being able to practice being a man in the proper way, and being challenged by other men who are challenging you to rise to the occasion, to the point where you can be competent within a group of people that you respect.
Yeah, that's really important. I've actually had arguments, if not lost friends, for kind of honest, semi-harsh conversations. Like, hey, dude, you're kind of fucking up, right? And you know it, right? Someone needs to tell you. And I feel like I wouldn't be a friend if I didn't tell you, right? Mm-hmm. You just keep getting away with doing the same stupid shit that's fucking your life up or someone else's, right? And some people can't accept that, and fair, good riddance, sorry. Like, if you can't accept reality, then maybe we're not a good fit to socialize anymore. But I don't find that with that particular group or the people I surround myself with now. Mm-hmm. In fact, when I do have those conversations with friends or even clients, it's often replied with a thank you, right? Mm-hmm. And then some work, right? Followed by some work on whatever the problem is. So, yeah, I mean, the toxic thing portrayed as being like this big, aggressive, like misogynistic, like rapist man that just is angry and like does man stuff. It's like
it's almost like a caricature. It's like a parody of masculinity that's been defined in
it's like penis envy, I think. I mean, it sounds stupid, right? But the world wouldn't be what it is today if men were just these like thugs.
Yeah.
And these people need to realize that things are never perfect, right? It's not perfect now. Whatever approach or view you have on the world or the government or the president or whatever, it's never going to be perfect. But it's still way fucking better than it was 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. Or even if you take like 3 to 4 lifetimes ago, people were shooting each other in sewage-filled, muddy streets, right? Starving and getting raped right and left.
Yeah.
We've still come a long way. There's a lot that talking about mindset work. Holy fuck. The whole world should be doing this. At least the people in Portland or like.
Yeah, I know. I'm very surprised to learn that you're from Portland, because it is such a obsessively politically correct Antifa riddled state versus other places. I think it might be a West Coast thing. It's obviously a university thing, but there's something just about the West Coast where this kind of it breeds this kind of outrage culture. And that isn't to say that we shouldn't be trying to do better, like you were saying, but things are getting better for most people, for men, for women, for people of color, everybody overall across the world. And this has been well studied and well documented, are getting wealthier, and the quality of life is improving, with the exception of obviously places that are still very third world and people are suffering greatly on a small scale. Not here.
Right.
Not here in Western society.
There's really not a whole lot to complain about here, but people are fixating on that. So like, talking about mindset work, right? It's all it is focusing on what they can't control, right? And cherry picking the terrible things and then letting that take over their minds. right? And they're putting all their energy and focus onto these few bad things when you're surrounded by a ton of amazing things that you're really taking for granted. Right? There's a lot of opportunity right now for human beings, especially in the North America.
Yeah, like whether you're struggling financially or you think that there isn't enough opportunity for you and things like that. You can't define people on a by group identity, right? You have to define people on their individual experience. But ultimately, especially now with such open access to the internet, anybody can improve their life in some way with these resources that are available to them. And, you've obviously been a testament to that. You've kind of shifted your and started a business online, and you're self-sufficient financially, and you've put out an ebook, and you're doing a lot of these other great things and spreading a lot of positivity. So before you go, I want to make sure that people know where they can access your ebook and how they can gain access to you and your private training.
Oh, well, I'm mostly interactive on Instagram at iron_will_PT. And currently, what's today's date? January 15th or 16th?
16th today, everybody.
So the link to my ebook is in my bio, but I'm actually launching a new project here soon that link will change. So if you get to it after that link, you could just DM me and I'll just send it to you. I'm also on Twitter at IronWillPT, and my website's ironwillpt.net. And I do Facebook, but not as much because people troll there too much.
Facebook seems to just be like a garbage dump for everything else that I have online.
Absolutely horrendous. It's you can't not offend people on it.
Yeah, and it's got this like super long form, so people can just write these gigantic complaints that you never get the time to actually respond to. But yeah, either way, man, I really appreciate you coming on, finally being able to have a face-to-face conversation with you. I'm looking forward to getting together with you in person and maybe doing some actual collaborating, get some workouts in together. But thanks for coming on Barbaric Wisdom.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that we were able to kind of shine some light on some things for some people that are maybe kind of lost or confused.
Absolutely. I think this will be a really powerful thing for people, and hopefully there's no hurt feelings.
Well, there's going to be always, right? Because that's the world we live in. I was actually thinking when we're talking about the graphs of progression, and then already upsetting people at that point. When you were doing your graph, you're doing this. And it looked like there's two bald white guys doing this, and really you were explaining a graph, but I could already see the screenshot.
Oh, I've backed myself into a corner. Well, thanks, Ethan, and I look forward to talking to you again.
All right, man. Take it easy. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Barbaric Wisdom. I'm Bronson Lee Norton. If you've been enjoying the podcast so far, be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest episodes. If you would like to show your support and help us continue to be able to bring your favorite guests onto the show, head on over to www.patreon.com/barbaricwisdom. That's www.patreon.com/barbaricwisdom.